Good evening. Welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening television news, broadcasting live and available on demand. Available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, and YouTube and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell you this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Kal Gajraj. This evening, we bring you the news of and perspective representing the LGBTQ+ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens, unique in the LGBTQ+ news, you will see it and hear it.
HotSpots Magazine Happening Out Television Network is a nonprofit 501c3 media company. The same models of PBS and NBR, but designed for the LGBTQ+ community. Our mission? Supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbian, queer and women, trans, student youth, seniors, HIV/AIDS healthcare, business, social justice, and faith help us support our community.
We're part of one of the largest LGBTQ+ media companies in America, HotSpots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ+ experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ+ and broader community.
Let's welcome anchor Jonathan Casañas. A board member of Forward Miami, he is also one of the producers of Gay Age Festival, the largest Latin diversity and inclusion festival in the nation. Good evening, Jonathan.
Wag. In the gay agenda, Sarasota's Big Gay Weekend from August 25th to the 27th. Sarasota's Big Gay Weekend is the perfect opportunity to rest, rejuvenate, and be ready to slay all day and night. Sarasota Out and Can Community Health will arrange the event at the Golden Host Resort from August 25th to the 27th. SarasotaOut.com is known for its bold vision of enriching, promoting, and uniting Sarasota's LGBTQ+ community, while CAN is a not-for-profit community-based organization that serves those affected by HIV, STDs, and viral hepatitis. The weekend event will feature happy hours, foam parties, pool parties, and even drag queen performances. Visit BigGayWeekend.com for more details.
Let's welcome John Hayden, a journalist for 28 years. He now works for several outlets, including Out South Florida, as senior reporter and community editor. Welcome, John.
Thank you. In the gay agenda, Heaven on Earth, a live storytelling event is just around the corner. This edition of Picha Kucha Night Miami, Picha Kucha, by the way, means chit-chat in Japanese. It presents some of Miami's leading thinkers, creatives, and changemakers sharing their stories of joy. The Picha Kucha event will gather 8 presenters telling their original stories live on stage. The event is held with support of the Idea Center at Miami-Dade College. The storytelling is set for July 28th at 7 p.m. Each speaker, including Happening Out Television's own Francesca D'Amore, will share uplifting stories to impact your soul. It will be an unforgettable evening of great people and riveting ideas. You can't afford to miss it. Details and tickets are available on PechaKuchaMIA.com. That's PechaKuchaMIA.com.
Let's welcome Mark Pettitt. Mark is a pioneering traveler and coordinated the very first gay pride parade ever on the continent of Antarctica. He and his husband, Luke, run linksbyluke.com, the chain mail harness and pride accessory shop. And by day, he's a leadership coach and trainer with the largest leadership development company in the world. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Cal. In the gay agenda, Breaking the Silence, a conversation on overcoming HIV stigma, July 20th. Save the date for a space-limited event being held in the beautiful Lake Pavilion in downtown West Palm Beach. Guest speaker Hyde Broadbent is a renowned HIV/AIDS activist who's been living with HIV and AIDS since she was born. Hyde was a vocal advocate for youth with HIV, appearing in a Nickelodeon special with Magic Johnson and on the Oprah Winfrey Show, talking about her experience with HIV as a child. Register for the event on Eventbrite.
Let's welcome TriniDaddy. He is currently a violinist and pianist with the Miami City Ballet and is the program director for the Seminole Theater Players in Homestead, Florida. Welcome, TriniDaddy.
Hello, everybody. Something about this episode feels a little lighter today. In the gay agenda, the unforgettable saga of Jekyll and Hyde, the Seminole Theater, Jekyll and Hyde. I don't know. The Seminole Theater Players presents Jekyll and Hyde, the Broadway musical, from July 21st to 30th at the historic Seminole Theater in Homestead, Florida. Shout out to Homestead. The Seminole Theater is known for offering a state-of-the-art performance facility for community members, written by Robert Louis Stevenson and featuring stunning music from Tony-nominated composer Frank Wildhorn and double Oscar, too, and Grammy-winning Leslie Bracus. The show promises to be an emotional spectacle. I am proud to share that I am the producer and musical director of the show. This event cannot be missed if you wish to treat your ears with magical music. Tickets can be purchased at seminoletheater.org. Does everybody have their tickets?
Yeah.
You have yours?
I do.
I will be there.
Yep.
Yeah, you have yours?
I do not have mine.
Okay.
15 and 7.
My
Liars.
passport's
Never
expired.
trust a human.
Passport to get to Homestead.
We're the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Wednesday, July 12th. Next, let's queer up business. After Supreme Court discrimination decision, Michigan Hair Salon refuses service to transgender people. When the Supreme Court ruled on June 30th in favor of a Colorado web designer who sought to refuse to make wedding websites for theoretical gay couples, activists and legal experts warned it would open the door to all kinds of businesses discriminating against LGBTQ plus Americans. Days later, at least one such case has popped up. Last week, a hair salon in Traverse City, Michigan, announced that it would not serve transgender clients, comparing them to animals. The Post made it clear that the salon sees discrimination as condoned under a free speech argument, just like the web designer. The post was accompanied by the hashtag #TakeAStand. When criticized in an online review of the business, the salon's owner, Christine Geiger, responded by sticking to her position, saying, quote, "LGB are more than welcome. However, the rest is not something I support," end quote. Geiger's language mirrors the hateful rhetoric circulated by many right-wing politicians about trans people. On Tuesday, after the comments circulated on Facebook and were picked up by local news, Geiger deleted her personal and professional Facebook page and set the salon's Instagram profile to private. I wasn't shocked about the Supreme Court ruling behind this because it was something that I felt shouldn't have gone to the Supreme Court in the first place, but in retrospect, what it also did was legalize discrimination going forward. Whereas businesses should be in business to be able to serve the community at large and patrons. I mean, on the flip side, I don't know why someone would want to support a business like this, because if you're a bigot, then you should promote yourself as a bigot, so that way I don't spend my money with you. But I don't want to do business with someone who doesn't want to support me as a human being.
The Supreme Court really left the door open on this ruling by saying basically anything that because the website design was a creative work and helping them to create a message, that kind of discrimination was okay. I have two very good friends, Troy and Jimmy, who are getting married in 2 months, and they just had their venue completely cancel on them. And I said, "What, is it because you're gay?" And they said, "Well, no, it can't be that. It's a venue." I said, "Yeah, but the Supreme Court says that it's creative works. And if that venue is helping you to create an event, they could certainly do that." It's such a horrible decision by the Supreme Court, not just because of the decision to discriminate against trans. in that circumstance, but to make it so broad and open to interpretation that it's going to have to be tested and challenged forever to go anywhere.
Yeah, I'm like the meathead of the group. I'm like, who gives a shit? Like, I don't want to give you my business anyway, but I just don't know what's going to have like a trickle down effect thereafter and what this is going to roll into in terms of my life and how it affects my day. But I just, right now it doesn't affect me because I just, when you think of the Karens of the world, you think of, 2020 when it was, I don't want to wear a mask and throwing things in the Starbucks. Like I would say, good, this is a moment where I can discriminate and say, get out of my store. But again, I just am afraid of where this leads to and how this will impact the community at large versus solely within a business.
Well, as a person who produces music, I think you should be very concerned about this ruling. Everything that you do is a creative work.
Every like, because you're getting married, and now like every time you go to book a florist, a venue, anything, you have to go, are you okay with gay people? We literally have to ask permission to be ourselves before we can go ahead and plan just traditional, normal life events. Now, this happened up in Traverse City, Michigan, which is in the northwest corner of Lower Michigan. And it is, it's always been kind of this bohemian blue dot in a sea of very sparsely populated, but very red part of Michigan. So I used to live in Michigan, a couple hours south, and I always loved going up to Traverse, and I think I still would. I mean, I wouldn't let this shrew ruin it for me. But I was talking with one of my friends who is a journalist in Traverse City, and she is working this story, and just to get hers, and she said to me, I want to believe Traverse City is a beautiful vibe always. But there are outliers, unfortunately. They haven't been able to get a hold of the salon owner, but she says, quote, I have only a screenshot of what was said on Facebook from the viewer. I've never seen anything like this before, especially from a business owner in Traverse City. It's just gross. And that really sums up the mood on the ground up there. And it's going to take discrimination, not just out of the legislature, not just down to the street level, storefront by storefront. We now have to go, are we okay to exist? This is wrong on so many multiple levels, and I do hope it gets challenged on each specific occasion.
So just in case anybody's thinking this is more of a religious issue, this is one of the statement that was on the page. If a human identifies as anything other than a man/woman, please seek services at a local pet groomer. The Studio 8 Hair Lab in Traverse City, Michigan said in a now deleted Facebook, the Kansas City Star reported. So Kansas City Star reported it. They compare them to animals, right? So this is not really like, I just don't want to support a gay marriage or something. To Kal's point, I also believe that it should never have made it to the Supreme Court. They're generally pretty choosy on what they would decide to hear. And there's no real aggressor it was just kind of a made-up situation.
Yeah, it was all theoretical.
Into it, right? So having said that, I actually agree with the decision. And I agree with the decision because this is the same lines as the cake baker. And how you are also in the artistic field, I am as well. That's what I do for a living. And I do not want to be coerced to be performing at a Trump rally or to be offer services that are going to promote a certain ideology that I'm not into. However, there's a difference, and we should understand what the Supreme Court ruling is. It is not discriminating against gay people. It is about a cause. For instance, even in the cake baker situation, which was never ruled on because of a technicality, but even in his situation, he's like, anybody can come into my store and purchase anything out of my store. It doesn't matter if they're gay or not. And the Supreme Court ruling is saying that anything that's just being sold to the everyday person, you can purchase. It's only when it comes to creative services that are against your personal religion. So for instance, if you were a cake baker and you didn't want to say happy abortion, or you didn't want to say happy something like that, then it's your right to do it. And I don't want to be coerced and sued because I don't want to perform at a white nationalist organization. So.
Well, yeah, I feel like, but that's why I feel like it's not that much of a change for me right now. Like I only work with venues that support the LGBTQ plus community. If I'm going to perform at a street festival, you're not allowed to throw anything at me. And we're not at that level yet where the discrimination or the hate crime will surpass kind of these creative scenarios within a cake shop, right? Mm-hmm. If it is okay to cause a hate crime or to perform a hate crime because of this, that's where I'm starting to get a little like weary on all these kind of dumb theoretical situations, because I don't want to buy a cake from you if this is something you're not into or you don't believe. But I also don't want you for it to be okay for you to throw a rock at me when I'm performing at a street festival. Does that make sense?
The word in your sentence, the key word is yet.
Yeah, right.
If you think that that hate crime laws are going to stand up after this, you are sorely mistaken at best, and a fool most likely, to be quite honest.
Well, thanks for that, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm here for you.
You did call yourself the meathead.
I am the meathead.
But no, we can't just like, for the same reasons. It sounds like you should be okay to be able to refuse service to someone, but you can't. And I'll fill in for Al right now. Sorry, Cal. But imagine if it was 60 years ago and you went up to a lunch counter and you couldn't get a BLT because the owner doesn't want to have black people in the restaurant. It's the exact same thing. Like, I could not. It is absolutely the exact same thing. That I couldn't go into a barber shop. Like, let's say it was my wedding day.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go in and get a professional shave done, just because I want it to look really good and tight. And they could say no. And that's absolutely wrong. It is, unfortunately, very American, because we are based on and founded on discrimination, and we've got millions, tens of millions, probably over 100 million people fighting to keep discrimination, and this story is exactly part of that narrative. Next, let's queer up out South Florida. Open door policy at Hamburger Mary's. Being able to open all the street-facing doors was once a perk of the Wilton Manors location. Now, it's a form of protest. In this week's Out South Florida, online now and on stands tomorrow, I look at how the LGBTQ plus community pillar is standing up to Governor Ron DeSantis and his enablers. For a time this year, those doors were shut due to a law passed by the Republican fascists in Tallahassee, labeling drag as adult entertainment. Hamburger Mary's in Orlando challenged the law, and a federal judge put it on hold while it wends its way through the courts. You can see the practical effect at their Wilton Manors location. Open doors for anyone passing by to see. Christina Donahue, the general manager of the Wilton location, told me, quote, "It's been so refreshing to be able to open the doors. We were keeping them open for a little bit, but then had to close them for the drag shows," end quote. As anyone paying attention knows, laws like Don't Say Gay, restricting trans health, and attacking drag are all solutions in search of problems. Donahue says they were always aware of young people in the audience, telling me, quote, "My queens catered to the audience. If they saw young children, they did the show the way they needed to because there were young kids in the audience. They always read the room very well," end quote. It is imperative other businesses, municipalities, and citizens follow Hamburger Mary's example. Stand up at every turn, every roadblock, and every bigoted action. And you know, I literally stumbled upon this story. I was walking down Wilton Drive last Friday. I think I was out with Al, and we were walking past, and I just noticed, because they had a queen on stage during her show, and you could just see right in. The music was coming out, the glitter, couldn't miss it. But I was like, it struck me. 2 years ago, I would have been like, who cares? But it struck me as a tangible evidence that we can fight back, and that we can, as a community, stand up and say no to this tyranny. Children are not endangered. Parents' authority is not threatened. There is a family-friendly drag show at 1:30 every Saturday afternoon at Wilton Manors Hamburger Mary's location. That is finally back on. Kids come and have a good time. Kids are not, and their parents are not dragged off the streets and forced to sit at tables at the restaurant. They come voluntarily. They have a good time. And that's what it's about.
And this narrative has gotten out of control, because I've been to my fair share of brunches, and I've rarely seen kids at any of them for years. So this notion that, you know, kids are always at drag shows, like, it's ridiculous. Like, number one, drag queen shows are normally at gay bars. children aren't allowed in bars. Like, why would you have a child there in the first place? So that kind of like crosses that notion off the list, because people who don't normally attend drag shows all of a sudden have an opinion of like, oh yeah, there's children there.
Well, there's restaurants.
There's restaurants,
Hamburger
yeah.
Mary's is a restaurant.
Yeah.
Our house is a restaurant.
It's a restaurant.
Yeah. So I mean, kids should be there. And, you know, we're in a generation where, 10 years into really marriage equality, and more of our same-sex couples are going to have kids. We've been having them for decades, but I mean, it's picking up steam, and we're going to want to be able to bring them to our places so that they can learn their parents' heritage. Or if you have a gay kid, be able to start to teach them their cultural heritage.
But not only same-sex couples, but there's a lot of heterosexual couples, you know, that bring their kids, you know, to a drag brunch or a restaurant.
Yeah,
like,
my whole family. My whole family would love to bring the kids. They just don't, because it's at a bar and we get a little wild. It's a little different for us, but we would otherwise. But I hear what you're saying, John. I mean, I'm appreciative that Hamburger Mary's doing it. I just feel like it's a little too late. I feel like now that you know that these laws are not going to hold your opening your doors, we should have been protesting. We should have been in drag during the Stonewall Pride parade. We should have been doing it. We should have had these doors open and should show people we're not doing anything bad. We're going to be in drag, and you can't arrest all of us.
I took a little bit of an issue with just the wording of the story, looking at them as a great example. I agree as well. I think that our first act out of the gate should not have been to close the doors and follow the law and play things safe. It should have been leave the doors open, let the cops come. Let's get the challenge done and out of the way. So, you know, I like that they're standing up in the community, but I'm with you. I think it should have started like that from day
I'm with
one.
you as well, because these, if you read the law, if you know anything about the law, there's no way that these laws are going to be able to hold up, because this is, of course, the First Amendment. Anybody, if you want to wear a breastplate and a crop top, you can do that. If you want to wear a burqa, you can wear that. All of this is ridiculous, and I agree we should have done that, because as soon as the police come to try to shut something down, then we're in front of Mango's. We're in front of every Miami nightclub that you can see the Clevelander when they're out there in their bikinis and doing all kinds of, you know, suggestive sexual dancing on there. And we'd be protesting outside of those buildings as well, saying, look, if you're going to arrest them, you're going to have to arrest all these people as well, and expose the hypocrisy right there.
Yeah, I agree with just about what everybody is saying. I do want to say Hamburger Mary's played the long game. They played the live to fight another day. Because I can tell you, if they had lost their liquor license or had it suspended, it's a lot harder to get it back.
I agree.
Once it's gone. So like even if the law backed them up and the revocation was found wrong, they would still have to fight months, maybe over a year to get it back, which would kill the business. I agree. It's practical versus protest. There is no right answer, but I do just want to do a shout out for a lot of the Hamburger Marys and all of them.
And I'm glad we're there now. All right. Well, next, let's queer up entertainment. HBO docuseries Last Call focus on serial killer who targeted gay men. HBO's latest docuseries examines a rash of murders in the early 90s known as Last Call killings, as each victim was picked up in the middle of the night at a gay bar in New York City. The full episode of Last Call, which premiered Sunday, centers on Peter Stickney Anderson, a banker who lived in Philadelphia at the time of his death, and Thomas Mulcahy, a salesman from Massachusetts, whose body was found in Burlington County, New Jersey. While no one was ever tried for Anderson's death, Richard Rogers was convicted of Mulcahy's murder in 2005. And many believe he is responsible for all 4 killings. He is currently serving 2 consecutive life sentences for the murders of Mulcahy and Marrero, who will be spotlighted in future episodes. Last Call is based on the 2021 nonfiction book of the same name by Elon Green. It covers 3 years during which 4 gay men disappeared from Manhattan, only for their dismembered bodies to be discovered off highways in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. The series interviews investigators who worked on the cases, victims, children, and partners, and queer activists who demanded a more robust response to rising hate crimes against the LGBTQ+ community in the 1990s.
It's in all of us. That fear of being hurt because we're queer.
Thank you, New York, for being so fabulous.
I remember the first gay bar I walked into. I thought, oh my God, I've been missing this my entire life. It just felt like home.
Queer bars were one of the few places where we could come and feel safe.
And then all of a sudden, everything was taken away.
Dismembered human remains were found in plastic bags along roadways outside New York City.
My dad went down to New York on a business trip and never came home.
My brother,
My uncle,
My friend.
he just disappeared.
These were pickup crimes. They were last seen at a gay bar, 5 Oaks, the townhouse.
clearly a serial murderer going after gay men, was on the loose.
It was so frightening because everyone was a suspect.
The queer community was very much trying to push law enforcement to give a shit.
At this time, we wouldn't put it past the police to kill us.
Hate crimes against gays and lesbians are up all over the country.
It makes people feel like maybe they're not safe and maybe a murderer isn't going to get caught.
We were scared. This guy's going to strike again, then could I be next? Peter Anderson,
Thomas Mulcahy,
Anthony Marrero, Michael Sicara.
They weren't just a statistic. They had their own story too.
This guy was a serial killer for years.
Was he gonna make a mistake?
How does someone get away with something like that?
You know, what I was going to say before this video cut me off was that, you know, these are interesting stories because in these instances, like, people knew that they were missing, right? A lot, you know, historically, what happens is, you know, gay people were kind of on their own. People kind of, you know, disassociated with them, or they didn't have family anymore that could you know, take care of these situations. So they would go missing, and that was it. Like, these murders would go scot-free because no one was looking for them. There was a scenario in Toronto where a lot of Middle Eastern gay men were going missing as well, because they would come, they would get their work permits, and then they would never be heard from again. And this serial killer was just putting their bodies in someone's yard, and no one found them for years and years and years. And so, you know, it's good to hear about this, because I even know now some of my friends who are being picked up at bars, they'll be taken home and then they act super sus. And they're like, I don't know why he's acting this way. Could it be the drugs? I'm leaving. And then you get home and you're like, could I have been murdered that day? And it's just like, we are susceptible to these types of instances, and we just have to be careful. And it's good that these things are kind of coming back to light.
And, you know, I'd like to put this in a little bit of historical context as well. The early 1990s. This was the age. AIDS was at its peak. We didn't really have effective drugs yet that were really widely available. So ACT UP is out on the streets of New York and LA and large cities saying, pay attention to us. And then you add into this is like 4 people over 3 years. So it's really a slow motion serial killer. And the fact that the bodies were found in different places, internet wasn't what it was, what it is now, and it wasn't easy for police to make the connection. So you have to remember, there was a lot going on. Yeah. And we were just being so ignored as a community that this sort of got lost, you know, in the middle of all the terribleness that era provided.
Well, and this really does kind of wrap around to the question that you asked yourself, Jonathan, when we were talking about the laws of, you know, why does this matter to me? You know, why do these little kind of legalized discriminations, if it really doesn't affect me, why should I care? Because all of these decisions and the movement of society in that direction puts us right back in that marginalized, easy to pick off, no social connections, kind of a community. So even when it's a story about, you know, the L, the G, the B, or the T, it is all of us, because we can all be pushed into that category of untouchables.
And I want to put it out there too. You guys have already said it, what I was going to say, which is basically understanding what being gay was like in the 90s to the younger generation that's coming out that seem to have no understanding of, maybe they have a little bit of the history, but the feeling of what it was like to see some of this on screen happening at the same, you know, in real life. And I remember, I love horror movies, so I was very much into Dahmer and Ted Bundy and reading all these stories. But when they're told now, they're told through a different lens, because with Dahmer, until I saw the movie, the series that, what's his name came out with, American Horror Story?
Yeah. Ryan Murphy.
Ryan Murphy. I didn't even realize how much of the gay and racial element was a part of it, and how it's so easy to target the people who are the minorities because nobody's going to really be looking for them, and the police are not going to care.
Exactly.
So like, it's such a great, and black trans women, you know, highest murder rate, same thing. You know, if you're a serial killer, the people you're going to go against are the most marginalized that you don't think anybody's going to be looking for. So
and like, and in those times we used to go behind a bush. Like cruising spots were like the only way that we were getting affection. Some of us are still doing it apparently, but we were on drugs. Like we wanted attention, so we would seek it in weird ways or weird, you know, in that time. And then we would go behind a bush, and you would so eat slim pickings.
But now, we all made terrible decisions in our teens and 20s. I'm absolutely sure. And 50s,
And 30 years now has passed by, and technology has advanced so much that now we can share locations with other people. You know, there's social media, so you can keep track of everyone. You know, I think the most important thing is always checking in with your family and friends, because even today, like, you always see posts on social media. It's like, oh, you know, someone passed away, and because no one checked on them or no one heard from them, you know, in a week, you know, so it still happens today with the amount of technology that we have and how connected we are. There's still those gaps.
Next, let's queer up sports. Megan Rapinoe defends trans women in sports. Don't look at me like that because I'm the one covering the sports story. I do realize how funny that is.
Go team.
TERF, Martina Navratilova responds, yikes. Tennis legend Martina Navratilova appeared to react to comments from Megan Rapinoe over transgender participation in women's sports as the soccer star gets set to participate in her final World Cup later this month. Rapinoe was asked about transgender athletes in women's sports in a recent interview with Time magazine. Rapinoe said lawmakers were, quote, trying to legislate away people's full humanity, end quote, and said she would accept a transgender woman replacing a cisgender female on the U.S. national team. As the comments circulated across the internet, Navratilova chimed in with one, yikes. The 9-time Wimbledon champion has been an activist for the gay community, but has been against transgender women competing against cisgender women in sports. In March, she applauded World Athletics for adopting a policy to exclude transgender female athletes from women's competitions. She called it a step in the right direction. Rapinoe, on the other hand, was one of the 40 professional athletes to co-sign a letter to House lawmakers in April in opposition to the Protection of Girls and Women in Sports Act, arguing that the bill would exclude women and girls from getting mental and physical health benefits. I just saw Lance Armstrong on the TV. He's on a terrible reality show that I'm not going to give credit to the title, but look, I have my sins as well. And just out of nowhere brings up the transgender athlete conversation and his feelings about, you know, that they should have their own leagues, and wouldn't that be wonderful? Straight or gay, I think that we need to stop speaking for the trans community. They should speak for themselves. And Martina doing this, I think, is such a letdown to her legacy of being an activist for the community and not seeing that the T is part of LGBTQ. When I was in college, we had a gay student union that then became the LGB student union. And our biggest debate of our entire time there with the organization was whether or not to add the T to that, because it made us so much more controversial. It created so many more enemies. And I was not on the right side of history in the beginning of that argument, but I am now. And I think that is an evolution that Martina needs to go through. Don't call yourself an activist and leave out the most marginalized. Well,
that's not completely fair. Like I'm not with her 100%. But I've been very vocal about this, you know, on this show before. You know, I've been an activist for a minute now. I still find it hard to bring these worlds together. I think that there should be a league. They should create a league specific to the trans community. You know, I think it's hard for us to fight that fight when there is biology and science that people want to talk about and talk over, and where we still really don't know what those levels look like and where the advantages are. I think it's still too premature. And I think, why are we fighting that that world when we can create our own thing. We can have our own money, create our own sources of revenue, and just like the LGBTQ plus Olympics type of thing. We don't have to stick to the norms. Women created their own leagues back then when men were doing it. Why can't we do the same? That's all I'm saying.
Well, first off, separate is never equal.
Sure.
Never, ever. In the gay games, which
but women aren't playing against men, though.
But in the gay games, women, I'm sorry, not women. In the gay games, gays are also still allowed to play in the regular Olympics. And we can't just go back, and to your point, when you said we shouldn't speak for them, but we need to speak up for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they are very marginalized. They're a small number. They are a subset of a subset in our community, in the American community. And if you think that conservatives and the haters aren't willing to pick us off one letter at a time, and that they're never going to come for the G and the L, but so go ahead and have at the T and the Q, you are sad and ignorant at.
But that's different. That's so different in sports.
And I also want to say we could not ask for a better representative of our community than Megan Rapinoe. She has been around championing us for well over a decade since she became the pink-haired standout star of the women's national team. She is amazing, and honestly, we don't deserve her. She is just great. And the last point I want to leave you with is you cannot spell Navratilova without the word rat.
Oh my God! You didn't say anything. You didn't say anything. I understand that you don't agree with her, and I understand that she's a little bit of a sellout. But we didn't make any moves. We haven't said anything really like of factual substance where you can tell me men and women are competing in today's sports.
So
like they don't.
So what I have a hard time with often on this show is facts and feelings being mixed together, right? So I understand the feeling, and the American Medical Association did come out and say that it can be harmful to transgendered people to not allow them to play as the gender that they most identify with. But that is a different issue than the fairness issue. And so in all other metrics, there are advantages. And the reason why we don't have mixed sports and we don't have mixed baseball leagues and mixed football teams is because, a fifth grader once told me boys are better than girls. And honestly, I hate to say it that way, anybody, I'm not trying to offend you, but we do know that what the stats are, and that in every sport, pretty much every
there
sport,
are biological disadvantages.
Sport, women at the top of their game, the best, do not even come close into being able to compete with men, which is why they formed their leagues in the first place. So then we have to ask ourselves, is there an advantage, even with on hormone suppressant or hormone treating, whatever? They've had the 3-year studies, and the Olympic Committee has made certain decisions that, okay, well, this amount is okay, this amount is okay. Mm-hmm. But there are other metrics in which, like height, is a big one, that there are benefits to it. And the last thing that I'll conclude with is that sports in general are not fair, right? When you get the Honduran team against the American team, and you have a population of people that are, 5'5", 5'4", and you have 6'7", 6'8", a much larger population. Yes. So if you want to start accommodating, and as Jonathan says, I feel I'm in the same place. We could probably figure out a way to bridge it, like the same way that they do in boxing with weight classes. If we can figure out a way so then it can be equitable, awesome. I'm
okay with that.
But I don't know there's no right solution on either side right now.
Trini, you raised an excellent point, and you asked a good question that we need to ask ourselves about. But I think it comes back to a question or two questions that we need to ask ourselves even before we get to that, because that really sums up how we feel and believe about our trans brothers and sisters. Do you believe that trans men are men? And do you believe that trans women are women? Because if you say yes, then you have to allow them.
That's not
to
fair.
How you define,
you're saying I don't support my
woman?
trans brothers and sisters if I don't agree that they should be in sports. That's not what I'm saying. I have trans women friends that are really close to me that I know would agree and said, yeah, there's a disadvantage there. I probably wouldn't want to, play against, the cis woman sports. And I'm not saying that we can't find, like what Trini's saying, like if we could find a way, I would love it. But as of right now, I just don't feel that it's fair for you to say or word it that way so that I'm not being supportive if I don't believe they should be in sports. It's not fair.
Here's how we're tied together, is that if somebody is against you because you're gay, they have a problem with what you're doing based on your gender, that someone of your gender should not be doing X, Y, and Z. Gender is also the root of what is happening with trans discrimination. So yes, one is technically sexual orientation. The other is technically gender identity, but the problem, the homophobia, the transphobia, all really come from just the definition of a classic gender standard that we have the audacity, no matter which letter that you are, to step outside of. That's why these stories matter.
And that just goes to say, like, for instance, I'm not very athletically inclined. So for me to, I know, shocker, right? So for me to go out there and play, you know, baseball or football or basketball, you know, there's probably, you know, cis straight girls that are out there that are better at it than me.
100%. 100%.
Wow, too far.
So for the fact that, you know, if anyone wants to be able to play a sport, they should just be able to.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, I think it depends when you're at like high school level, community level, and when you're like Olympic level. I think there's different stakes involved in scholarships to go to schools and all that kind of stuff as well. But I do want to, you said what question we should ask before all of this. Is a trans woman and a cis woman, or a trans woman.
Is a trans woman a woman? Is a trans man a man?
And since there's no, why everybody knows I hate the letters, because I don't know why we should need to put everybody in every single frickin' box and just not say that we're all unique individuals. But let's try to put a few letters and labels to it. That a trans woman, do you believe a trans woman and a cis woman have the same experience in a material way from childhood going into adulthood? Do you think there is enough of that in order to, and how are you even defining woman is? Nobody can define what a woman is. Can you tell me what a woman is?
Someone who identifies as a woman.
But that's not a definition.
But if they identify as a woman, they should be able to play in a sport.
So if I identified as can I identify as anything else, or is it just and that makes me that just because I identify as that?
Okay, I think what you're intimating is that people are going to start saying they're trans so that they can start. And this was a
not at all.
This was a South Park
that
episode.
That is not what I'm
but they
saying.
actually did. But they actually did. They ran a marathon as a male, and then they ran another marathon as a female, and they won both.
I don't believe that.
Those are the stories that make it look bad and that show that there is a disadvantage within these communities. And that's the part that's still like.
And we need to remember that cis women are also minorities as well. And they have their story and they have their space as well. And I think that needs to be respected. And I think that we can come together and figure out a way to bridge these two worlds together so it's fair for everybody. But we're just not there yet, unfortunately.
And I hope that we do, because I feel really bad about it. Anyway, go ahead, Trini.
All right, let's queer up politics now.
Let's queer up politics. New Latvian president is only the 7th openly LGBTQ plus head of state. Latvia swore in the first openly gay president of a Baltic nation Saturday. Edgars Rinkevič, who since 2011 was the country's foreign minister, was elected by parliament in May after President Eglis Levits did not seek re-election. Rinkevič is known for being a strong supporter of Ukraine's cause, and in his inaugural speech, he reaffirmed that commitment. Rinkevič announced he is gay on Twitter in November 2014, though the country, a former Soviet Union republic, is not especially LGBTQ plus inclusive. The country allows for same-sex civil unions, for example, but not same-sex marriages. Hours before he came out, Rinkevič tweeted that he would continue to fight for a legal framework for all kinds of partnerships. He said he knew there would be mega hysteria and ended the post with the hashtag #ProudToBeGay. He is one of just a few openly gay heads of state in the world. And that's freaking awesome that in the Slavic countries, which there's a lot of homophobia and still, not representation in seats of power, that he was elected. I mean, I guess because the other guy didn't seek re-election, and maybe there's a little, I don't know what the challenging situation was like there. I didn't get all into that. But it's fantastic that he's standing up for that. I think there's been more of a movement in Russia that I've been seeing with trying to legalize gay rights, or to at least decriminalize them. So it is something that's spreading across the world. And even though our kind of shit show of Florida can sometimes color our opinions of what's going on in the world, we are really making progress, and we should celebrate the wins when we can get them, or else we'll just live in the toilet here in Florida. So awesome. And
why we gotta be a toilet?
Well, it's kind of shaped like a toilet. If you get it at like the right 45-degree angle. I can only hope, though, that this is like maybe paving the way for Pete Buttigieg 2028 or something like that. I would love a gay president here.
I don't know about all that. I mean, listen, they're headed in the great direction. Like, I remember when we were at the domestic partnership, like, level at work, and now we have, gay marriage, and I feel like they're headed in the same place, the same direction. I always say it when I'm on the show, I am worried, because every time, like, outside of our little bubble, outside of, it's happening out in work, like, you always hear of the bad stuff. You always hear of all the killings. And I feel like every time there's something good, if there's, a non-binary person on a magazine, you hear of all the bashing outside of that. You hear all of like the protesting and people that are killed thereafter. And these are the kind of scenarios that I always worry. I'm like, I want to be happy. I want to say, great, this is amazing, an openly, gay head of state. But then I think, what's going to happen thereafter? Like, what are the repercussions for this? And everyone always says, this is great. Like, we have to fight our fight, but it's still always in the back of my mind, like, oh, people are going to die because of this.
Well, but somebody has to step up and take the slings and arrows. God bless him. President Barack Obama faced his fair share of hate, 15 years ago when he ran against John McCain. Mm-hmm. He sat up there, he took it, and he took it through 2 election cycles, won both of them. This movement in Latvia is especially poignant because NATO is currently meeting right next door in Lithuania.
Oh, yeah.
While they're debating the future of Sweden's membership, the military bloc essentially against Russia. Let's just say what it is. It's against Russia and the fate of Ukraine. So the fact that we've got an openly gay member of, or an openly gay leader of a member of NATO, and I think they're in the EU, but I'm not sure. If not, they're a consulting member. This gives us a seat at the table. Latvia, small country, roughly the size of this studio, but incredibly important. The Russians took it over, then the Nazis took it over, then the Russians came back again, and the Russians have proven that they will come back again. So this is incredibly important for us to have our seat at the table. And like you said, there will probably be blowback, but he's stepping up and taking it. And so God bless you and thank you, sir.
Yeah. And I really hope that in our lifetime, we see more and more people from the LGBTQ plus community step up and run for office and seek these positions globally. Not only here, in Florida and the United States, but across the world. And that just goes to show also, like, we may have already had heads of state, but they were closeted because they weren't comfortable enough to come out, because gay people have existed for centuries. We know that already. So you never know. It's unfortunate. We now live in a time where people are more comfortable to come out, and people are now promoting their platform and running for these positions. So hopefully there'll be more.
That sounded like a candidate speech a little bit. Didn't expect him to go and announce Kal Gajraj for Florida House Representative.
Following Abraham Lincoln.
I might give the exclusive to South Florida.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Very good.
All right. Next, we are proud of our special partnership with the Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral and the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, Al Ferguson and Fay Watt, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and the little guy over my thing, Android television?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That's the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Kal Gajraj. On behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including Jonathan Casañas, John Hayden, Mark Pettitt, and TriniDaddy, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. to our LGBTQ plus world. We wish you good night.
Good night.
Good night.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ plus evening news show, brought to you from Happening Out Television Network. We operate in the same model of PBS and NPR, but for the LGBTQ plus community. We educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community, with more than 100,000 a week watching us on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the story going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.